Abraham and Sarah lived in a big tent in a far-off land. They had many sheep and camels and lots of helpers. They had everything they could want, but one thing made them very sad. They did not have any children of their own. Every day Sarah would look at the other families with their little boys and girls running and playing. She wished so much for a son to hold in her arms. Abraham also longed for a child to teach and to love. They grew older, and their wish for a child seemed like it would never, ever come true. It was a deep ache in their hearts that time could not heal. They prayed to God about their sadness. They asked him again and again for a child. One starry night, God spoke to Abraham. He took him outside his tent and told him to look up at the sky. "Count the stars if you can," God said. The sky was filled with more stars than anyone could ever count, twinkling like tiny diamonds on dark velvet. God told Abraham, "Your family will be as many as the stars in the sky." This was a very big promise. How could it be true? Abraham was very old and Sarah was old too. It seemed impossible, but Abraham chose to believe God's wonderful words. Years went by after God made his promise. Abraham and Sarah kept waiting. They kept hoping. Sometimes it was very hard to believe. Sarah would sometimes laugh a sad little laugh, thinking she was much too old to have a baby. Other people might have given up, thinking God had forgotten all about them. But deep inside, a little spark of hope remained. They held on to the memory of that starry night and God's powerful voice. They served God faithfully, even when their biggest prayer had not yet been answered. They trusted that God had a special plan for them, even if they couldn't see it yet. This long time of waiting was a test of their patience. It taught them to trust in God's timing, not their own. Every morning they woke up, and every evening they went to sleep. They carried this wish with them. Their home was quiet, missing the sounds of a child's laughter. They learned to lean on each other and on God for comfort. The promise felt distant, like a faraway star, but they knew that God was always near. Their story was not over yet. The most amazing part was still to come, and it would all begin with the answer to their deepest, most heartfelt prayer for a child. One day, some special visitors came to see Abraham. They were messengers from God. They told Abraham that his wife Sarah would soon have a son. When Sarah heard this from inside the tent, she laughed to herself. "How can I have a baby now?" she thought. "I'm so old, and my husband Abraham is old too." It sounded like the most unbelievable news in the world. But the messenger knew she had laughed and said, "Is anything too hard for God?" This question made Sarah think. Maybe, just maybe, a miracle could happen. God's promises were bigger than what seemed possible. And just as God had promised, a miracle did happen. The next year, when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. They were filled with a joy so big it felt like their hearts would burst. They named their son Isaac, which means he laughs. They chose this name because Sarah had laughed when she heard the news, but now they were all laughing with pure happiness. The quiet tent was now filled with the sweet sounds of a baby. Their long, long wait was finally over, and the promise had come true in the most wonderful way. Abraham loved Isaac more than words could say. He would hold his tiny son and thank God for this incredible gift. Isaac was the son of the promise, the one who would carry on the family name. Every day was a new adventure. Abraham and Sarah watched Isaac grow from a tiny baby into a strong, happy boy. He loved to run and play around the camp, and his laughter was music to their ears. He was their whole world, the center of their lives. The sadness they had felt for so many years disappeared completely, replaced by overwhelming love and gratitude for their precious son. Isaac was a special child, and everyone knew it. He was a daily reminder of God's power and faithfulness. When friends and neighbors saw Isaac, they saw proof that God keeps his promises, no matter how long it takes. Abraham told Isaac stories about God and the great promise he had made under the starry sky so many years ago. Isaac learned to love and trust God, just like his father did. The family was complete and happy. Their hearts were full of thankfulness for the miracle boy who had brought so much light and laughter into their lives. They felt truly, deeply blessed. One day, When Isaac was a young man, God spoke to Abraham again. This time, God's words were very difficult to hear. He wanted to test Abraham's faith. God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a sacrifice on a mountain I will show you." This must have broken Abraham's heart. Isaac was the miracle child he had waited for his whole life. The thought of hurting him was unbearable. How could God ask for such a thing? The promise of a family as numerous as the stars seemed like it would end. Even though he was full of sorrow, Abraham trusted God completely. He did not understand God's plan, but he chose to obey. Early the next morning, he got up and prepared for the journey. He cut the wood for the offering, put a saddle on his donkey, and called for Isaac and 2 of his servants. He did not tell Sarah what God had asked him to do. He simply told his son they were going to a special place to worship God. It was a long and quiet journey. For 3 days they walked, and with every step, Abraham must have carried the heavy weight of God's command in his heart. When they arrived at the mountain God had shown them, Abraham told his servants to wait at the bottom. He said, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you." Notice he said, "We will come back." This shows that even in this terrible test, Abraham believed God would somehow save Isaac. He gave the wood for the offering to Isaac to carry on his back. Abraham carried the fire and the knife. As they walked up the mountain together, just the 2 of them, the silence was broken by Isaac's voice. Isaac turned to his father and asked a simple, innocent question. "Father," he said. "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said. "But where is the lamb for the offering?" This question must have pierced Abraham's soul. He looked at his brave son, who trusted him so much. With a voice steady with faith, Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the offering, my son." And so they continued their walk up the lonely mountain, a father and son bound by love and an unshakable trust in the unseen plan of God. When they reached the top of the mountain, Abraham built an altar out of stones. He carefully arranged the wood on top of it. His heart was heavy, but his faith in God was stronger than his fear. He then gently tied up Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Isaac did not fight or cry out. He trusted his father and he trusted God. It was a quiet and solemn moment, a picture of perfect obedience. Abraham then picked up the knife. He raised his arm, ready to do what God had asked. He loved his son, but he loved God even more. Just as Abraham was about to bring the knife down, a voice called out from heaven, "Abraham! Abraham!" It was the angel of the Lord. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the angel said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham lowered his arm, his body flooding with relief. At that moment he looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a nearby bush. God had provided the sacrifice, just as Abraham had told Isaac he would. He had passed the test. Abraham quickly untied Isaac and hugged him close. Their hearts were overflowing with thankfulness and joy. Together, they took the ram and offered it as a sacrifice to God instead of Isaac. Abraham named that place "The Lord Will Provide." Because of Abraham's incredible faith and obedience, God blessed him again. The angel of the Lord called out a second time, promising that Abraham's family would be more numerous than the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. He promised that through his family, all the nations on earth would be blessed. Abraham and Isaac walked back down the mountain together, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced the greatest test imaginable and had seen God's faithfulness firsthand. When they returned home, their family was filled with a new sense of peace and gratitude. They knew without a doubt that God was always with them, that he keeps his promises, and that he provides for those who trust in him. Abraham's family grew, and the blessings of God continued for many, many years, all starting with a promise, a miracle son, and a father's great faith.